Hello everybody and welcome back to Kerbal Space Program, where we've still got 4 more of these probes. And I'm gonna be honest, I don't have to do this on camera. I'm just having fun with it. Like, I would be willing to do this off camera, and we'll probably still have a couple more of these probes left after this episode. So if you're done watching this and you want me to move on, leave a comment, let me know. But for right now, like I said, I'm just having fun with this. And I want to try something a little bit more in depth this time. So here's what we're going to do. We're going to decouple this right now and let that get on out of there in its super awkward fashion. And now let's take a look at our orbit. Great. So at this periapsis here, what we're going to do is we're going to just drop this down ever so slightly so that the periapsis here is not quite in the Eve atmosphere. We're going to bring it to be just over 90 kilometers. So that it is something about like this. Perfect. And that'll be a retrograde burn, of course. We'll go ahead and warp towards that. And we'll need to stage this engine to get it to fire, of course. But I want to make this be as non-energetic as possible. And like I said, I'm just having fun with these probes. We don't need them to do anything necessarily in particular. I mean, a splashdown in the ocean would be nice, don't get me wrong. But overall, I'm just having fun. So we're going to hop into the maneuver mode here and give ourselves the orbital info. And we'll just watch that apoapsis number and make sure that it and the periapsis both stay up over 90 kilometers. That is our current goal. And we will go ahead and fire this engine now, but I'm not actually going to burn this. I just wanted to ready the engine. And I'm going to burn this very, very gently. This is only 18 meters per second here that we need, right? So we're just going to burn this right about at T minus, I think, 5 seconds. That would mean that I should burn it at like half thrust, but yeah, I'll burn it at about half thrust. Bringing that apoapsis right on down. Okay, had to stop there. But that means that we were able to lower our energy level just a little bit. Next, I'm going to come over around here, and I'm going to add a quick radial maneuver here, I think. Actually, no, I'm going to do a retrograde maneuver here, which will pull us down very, very minutely into the atmosphere. About like that. I'm going to change when we do this to be about here. Okay. So we'll go ahead and warp towards that. I just want to barely dip into the atmosphere here because I want to aerobrake maximally. We're going to go ahead and deploy this at maximum deployment angle. This is, I still believe that 100 degrees is slightly less efficient than 90 degrees. I don't have evidence for that statement. That is just what I believe to be the case. So we're going to burn this in just a few seconds here. And we're going to blow ourselves up another probe, I'm pretty sure, but I want to give this thing the absolute best chance of surviving. So let's just go ahead and burn this very, very minutely here. Okay, I'm just going to stick us retrograde. There. 89.93 kilometers is maybe a little bit on the high side. Let's bring it down just half a kilometer into the atmosphere. That should be good. Now the question is, does this pull our apoapsis down into the atmosphere? I believe it will. But this is just a very, very minor aerobrake maneuver. Now, we're going to go ahead and warp here because we are still heading towards the apoapsis here. We're not going to hit the atmosphere for a little while. We have plenty of electric charge in theory. I'm going to turn our hibernation on, though, just to conserve some electric charge here. Wonderful. And we're just warping for now until we hit the periapsis, which will be in about 10 minutes. So we'll warp this a little bit. And we're just going to flip this back, hibernation off. Wonderful. We're going to hit the atmosphere in about 15 meters here. Of course, this isn't how real atmospheres work, but that is what we're going to do. There we go. And we can see here our apoapsis is already dropping, as is our periapsis. Our periapsis is actually dropping faster than our apoapsis, which doesn't exactly make sense to me. Okay, now it's evening out. That's good. The apoapsis should be dropping faster than our periapsis, and that, I believe, will be the case as we approach the periapsis here. That said, you can see our time to periapsis is actually already increasing. We're only 100 meters into this atmosphere. These aerobrakes, turns out they generate a fair amount of drag. So we're just going to try to bleed off as much as we absolutely can in this upper atmosphere. And you can see here that we're not quite fully in the atmosphere right now, but there's no way that we're coming back out of this atmosphere. I'm going to physics warp here as we come down a little bit. And I'm just watching this apoapsis number, 200 more meters in the apoapsis, make that 100. And we are not exiting this atmosphere. So here we come. We're coming in. That is wonderful. Time to periapsis is increasing here. But we should be bleeding off a fair amount of energy. Specifically, we're bleeding off horizontal speed right now. And that is indeed what we want to be doing. Are we increasing or decreasing our speed right now? That's a question. And we have the sun coming out here. That's fine. Once again, I'm going to burn off this fuel once we see our first thermometer. And just try to... Well, actually, maybe it should be a like height threshold. Well, seeing our first thermometer basically is a height threshold. So there is that. Okay, 3215.1. So we are decelerating. Not very quickly, but we are decelerating. And I do specifically want this to be at 100 degrees right now. I'm still operating under the assumption that this is slightly less efficient, but it should be slightly more thermodynamically stable, or I guess slightly less thermal load than at 90 degrees, I believe. While at the same time probably providing more drag than 80 degrees. I don't know that for a fact. I'm making stuff up here right now. So, take that with a grain of salt. Or maybe a lot of grains of salt. We are still about half a kilometer into this atmosphere, by the way. We're trying to do maximal aerobraking here, is what we're trying to do. And we need to drop somewhere around a kilometer per second, ideally, before this burns off. Once again, you know, now that I think about it, we need to fire the engine when these burn off, if they burn off. That said, we had a much better entry when we tried raising our entry height previously, and I think that's going to continue to be the case here. We're just going to bleed off absolutely as much as we can. We may or may not utilize this decoupler. I need to think about what I think about this decoupler in this exact situation. I think that my current theory is that it is a hindrance, mostly because it seems to think that this is the root part rather than this, which is a little bit odd. But, I mean, the way we're deploying this is not necessarily the way the KSP expects, so that's probably okay. You can see here we are very, very slowly decelerating. However, our altitude is beginning to drop relatively quickly at this point. So that is fine. Gravity is taking over. And we are aerobraking nicely. This over here, 100 kilometers away at this point, is our probe launcher. Speaking of which, I technically didn't check to make sure that it was out of the atmosphere, but I'm sure it is. I'm sure it is. I sure hope it is. That thing will not survive re-entry, for sure. This only mostly won't survive re-entry. It's very likely that the heat shield will survive, as we've discovered. It may not survive impact without the rest of the craft, but we'll give it a go. This is just the kind of thing that I find fun, this sort of experimentation. Please let me know if this is not entertaining to anyone else. And we can move on. But for now, I was looking forward to this all day. So here we are. I'm going to go ahead and physics warp at this point. Ooh, that looked spicy. That looked spicy indeed. Okay, we now see a thermometer. I'm going to stop the physics warp. We're continuing to slow down. We're seeing multiple thermometers here. We may want to drop this to 80 degrees, or perhaps to 90. Okay, we'll drop it to 90, and we'll just try to have these air brakes last as long as possible, or maybe we should just leave them fully extended. Would we be better off leaving them like this and having them burn off sooner, or bringing them in slowly over time? I'm thinking it might be the latter. Okay, we're definitely seeing some heating here. Bringing it down to 80 degrees. Okay. We're going to drop it to 70 soon. This atmosphere is starting to get pretty thick. Okay, we just entered re-entry camera mode. I'm just watching those heat gauges. Yeah, it looks okay. We'll drop this down to 70. Next up, of course, will be 60. And we're just trying to utilize these as much as possible here. You can see here our horizontal speed is definitely dropping. We got to drop this to 60. I'm going to rotate this as well. Try to evenly spread our temperatures a bit here. There we go. I'd like to get under 3,000 before these actually burn off. That would be the ideal scenario. Let's see how this goes. I don't think we're actually going to get there, to be clear. That's like my pipe dream. That would be amazing if that happened. But I don't think it's going to. I'm going to drop these down to 40 degrees at this time. Should we just hold it like this? No, I think that's a bad idea. We could, however, do this. I'm going to drop it to 20 degrees. We are accelerating. Okay, let's bring it on down then to 30. We are decelerating. Okay, so this is about the lowest that we can go, and these are going to start burning off now. Yep. We could do this. Retract them, and then just deploy them and have them all burn off suddenly. That is something we could do. It's not necessarily something we should do, but it sounds fun, so I'm going to do it. Aw, yeah. There they go. We're not surprised by this in the slightest, but we are now going to burn off as much speed as we can with our engine. I do think that we should have moved our Probodobodyne Octo 2 up in this stack. I think that that is definitely a mistake. So let's decelerate here as much as we can. We got about another 250 meters per second on this burn. We're actually moving relatively slowly at this stage. Another 200 meters per second going to burn off here. We're not seeing an overheat on the engine just yet. Another 80 meters per second. There's the overheat on the engine. Okay. The engine is burned out. We're moving at 2.7 kilometers per second right now. Now, the Eve atmosphere is really thick, so this isn't shocking that we are seeing some overheat here. I'm actually thinking about ditching this stage very soon. Like... This is gonna be tricky. This is gonna be real tricky. Ditching this is always... Okay. Something like that. Why did it all just come apart? That's my question. It seems like... I actually want to test something. And we're going to have to wait until this explodes, right? Until this crashes into the ground. But I want to test something to do with this system that we've built. It seems like some of the bits above the decoupler aren't actually connected together the way they're supposed to be. Because the moment we decouple that engine, at least in Atmo, it feels like the whole thing falls apart. And now that might be due to heat transfer, to be clear. That might be like something to do with the decoupler blowing up or the engine impacting portions of it or something along those lines. But I'm just thinking here, what if for the final one of these, we try to drop it straight down with just the heat shield and the air brakes? As slow as possible. Now we have several more attempts before we need to do that. The first attempt, I'm likely going to expend on a tiny proof of concept of what I just laid out. I'm not going to do the full thing until the final attempt if we have not succeeded before then. I really wish there was a way to abort this flight before this point. This isn't going to survive. That's okay. And this is great. This is great. I'm loving this. This is absolutely fantastic. The only thing I'm not loving is I wish there was a way to just abort this flight at this point. It's a waste of time waiting for it to hit the ground. Unfortunate, to be sure. Well, we'll just go down in physics warp. And I mean, this took what, like 8 minutes for this attempt, not counting physics warp time? That's not that bad, I suppose. Or is that just since the explosion? That may be since the explosion. Okay. So, of course, we're going to head back to the tracking station. And the overall concept is that for that final one, we're going to kill as much horizontal velocity as we can with this. The 1556 meters per second that we've got here. That would be for the last one. So what I'm going to do here is I'm going to deploy this. We're going to try another one of these, and the last one would definitely be next episode. So we're going to undeploy the air brakes, and then we'll decouple this. That's only slightly awkward. Okay, let me go. Let me go. Excellent. Okay, we made it out. How's our orbit looking? Our orbit is reasonable. Okay. So we are going to switch over to this guy. And I think the plan is at the periapsis, we're just going to burn all of our... We're going to burn all of our everything. What is... We have no engine in this. Why do we have no engine? I grabbed the wrong decoupler. Okay, well, that was my own fault. So much for that one. That one is not going to do anything. It's never going to make it. So all we can do is this one then. Gotcha. I want to make sure I have the right decoupler here. Yes, I do. We're going to go ahead and redeploy these air brakes. And we will decouple this guy. And off it goes. Excellent. We have an engine in this one. So this is going to be a dry run. right, of the overall plan. What's our time here? T-minus 35? Okay. So we're going to go ahead and go to retrograde, and we're going to warp to about here. And the idea here is this is just going to be a minimal run, and I don't expect this to work, to be clear. This is a minimal run of a burn that is going to be here at... Actually, we should be burning this now. Absolutely now. And we're just going to bleed off as much horizontal speed as we can, and we're going to enter this atmosphere pretty sharply. Again, I don't expect this to work. I expect this to burn up very quickly. Very, very quickly. But we're just going to burn this off as much as possible. And we're going to be coming in. Looks like we're going to have the sun. That's okay. We're just trying to burn this off in space right now. Specifically doing it in space, by the way. And then, once this burn is finished, we are going to ditch the engine. And we're just going to go in with the heat shield. Now, again, I fully expect this to blow up. 1,000,000%. That said, our orbital velocity is going to be quite a lot lower entering the atmosphere here. Okay. We switch to this. I'm wondering if our heat transfer is because of this. I don't know. Maybe not. Maybe not. So what is our actual horizontal speed here? That is lower than I expected, actually. That's not too bad. Now you can see here we're still accelerating. But with our air brakes at full deploy, that should, in theory, stop pretty soon. We're already pretty low in this atmosphere. All things considered. Huh. I definitely expected this to go worse. I kind of expected us to already be dead. If I'm honest. This may end up working. Now, we're still going to have these burn off, don't get me wrong. But we're already below 3 kilometers per second here. Our heat shield is ablating, sure, but doing its job in theory. These will burn off. And we may want to drop them at this point to 80 degrees. Or maybe just let them burn off and see what happens. I am going to rotate them to spread the heat a little bit more thoroughly. We are down below 2.9. This one's going to burn off. Yep. Expected. 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 And now, we see if the octo blows up. It probably will. And it did. But that was fascinating to me. Reason being, I think we can maybe do this. So I'm going to physics warp this, and yeah. See, these parts are surviving reasonably okay. I mean, that blew up, but that wasn't shocking. That was still at Kerbal orbital speed. But we have another 1,500 meters per second to burn here with this final one. I'm actually going to do it this episode. This is going to be the last one of these, and so honestly, if you commented up about whether you find this interesting or not, I'm not going to see it. Well, I'm not going to see it in time before we finish this anyway. It'll go a little long, but that is, I think, reasonable. So, we're just going to bring this on down. Honestly, I really wish that we could just abort this flight at this point. But alas, that is not currently an option. 100 meters per second, we're 20 kilometers up. I mean, this definitely was a very different re-entry profile, right? With another 1,500 meters per second to burn, I think we can do it. And this has taught me some very interesting things, for sure. Eve orbital velocity is about 3.3 kilometers per second, so our ascent stage is definitely going to need to be beefed up. We knew that, to be clear. We knew that our ascent stage was not going to be enough. But I've learned a lot while doing these last few episodes, and had a lot of fun doing it too. It's been great. I very much enjoyed this. So we're going to bring this on down, and I want to give this one final attempt with our last probe. And down we go. We will, of course, be impacting with the heat shield here. Eventually. I really, really wish... Can we stop it from here? No. It would go back to the autosave. I don't want it to go back to the autosave. This probe blowing up was always going to happen. It always was going to happen. Oh, this is a nice coastline here. Fascinating. I always find it interesting how you can see the sun so clearly from the surface. Or at least clearly enough for this reflection. But you can't see the surface from orbit. I don't know. I feel like that's an issue with the reflection. With the specularity, more particularly. Okay, so we're going to head back to the tracking station, and we have one last attempt. And that attempt, we're going to try to come basically straight down. Now, these two here. Actually, it's this one is the one we want to fly. The others are probably going to get untracked because I made that mistake, but all is okay. So, what we're going to do here is we're going to deliberately destroy this entire contraption. And I want to check... Yes, that looks correct. Okay, so we're going to head over to retrograde. And I'm going to warp to the periapsis here. Actually, I'm going to warp to here. Excellent. And actually, without the extra mass, we have 2.1 kilometers per second here. That is pretty good. We can probably re-enter quite slowly here. How long is this burn going to be? Fairly. So let's get it started. So we're just going to sit here in retrograde mode and burn this off as quick as we can. And yeah, we're going to have parts burning off here, absolutely. We're going to enter Atmo, I think, before this burn is over. Yes. Yes, indeed. I'm going to do this for now. I'm also going to deploy these aerobrakes. It's going to cause some kind of weird forces, but we expect that. And we're just going to continue burning this as hard as we can. We still have quite a lot of burn time on this. Yeah, our solar panels are going to burn off. That's okay. We don't mind that. Look at how slowly we're moving already. 2.5 kilometers per second. We're almost down to Kerbal re-entry speeds. We've still got 1,300 meters per second on this, plus another quite a bit of meters per second on our actual probe. I think this is going to work. I actually do. Granted, our thrust to weight isn't phenomenal, but it doesn't have to be. That's the thing. Still 2 minutes of burn time on this. Look at how low we are. We're at Kerbal orbital speeds right now. Okay. Time to burn. We weren't able to burn all of that fuel off because the engine exploded and overheated. That's not shocking, to be clear. We are currently below 2 kilometers per second. We should be facing retrograde here. And yes, these are going to burn off. That's okay. We're at 1.6 kilometers per second. 1.5. 1.4. 1.3. 1.2. 1.1. We're at a kilometer per second. 800 meters per second. 600. 500. We're good. We're good. It worked. So that needs to be how we go about doing this. We need to come in with as little horizontal velocity as possible and just allow drag to do its thing as we're coming in vertically. So the question now becomes, yeah, we're going to be a little bit off center because we lost one of our aero brakes. That's okay. The question now becomes, how far down are we going to go in terms of our speed as we descend here? Well, that was a little awkward. I mean, why are we getting music? We're in Atmo. Okay, whatever. Overall, that worked surprisingly well. So that just means that we didn't have enough delta V in this to do a powered re-entry, is what we need to do. So I have definitely learned things while doing this, and a lot of them. Look how slow we're moving right now. 80 meters per second. It's going to take us forever to get to the ground. And that is wonderful. Technically, I'm not sure we even need SAS on at this point. We can probably just fall, and yeah, we're going to be a little off-center and spinning a little bit because of our aero brakes, but that's okay. Maybe we should set our aero brake angle to be 90 degrees at this point. We're 17 kilometers up. I sure hope we're over water. I have no idea if we are or not. It almost looks like we're not. 84 kilometers from one of our other landing sites, so there's that. And yeah, we're losing delta V from our fuel. That's not shocking to me. We're going to be landing with our parachute, of course. And we should probably go ahead and deploy that at this point. And I'm going to have that... just leave that at default, I think. We'll just let that come on in. We may want to undeploy the air brakes, or deploy them at maybe a small angle and use them as impromptu landing legs. That might be a possibility. So have them come down to... whoa, okay. Whoa. Let's keep them open until the parachute can take over. How about? That was a very rapid acceleration. But yeah, this is an effective entry model, and I really, really like that. I do wish we hadn't have lost this. If I had had a slightly better re-entry trajectory and been able to use all of that fuel in that first stage, I think it would have been fine. Overall, I'm very pleased with this. We are, of course, physics warping our way to the ground. I'm actually a little surprised we can adjust the deploy angle of the air brakes without a connection. But, okay. And we can deploy the chute, too. And, in fact, that's what we'll do. Without the chute, or rather with the chute here, we can probably change our deploy angle to be, like, say, 30 degrees. And that will be the impromptu landing legs. Now, I still think that we're going to land on land. Yeah, that's unfortunate for us. That's a decent landing site as well, actually, for our manned mission. It's not a splashdown, but that's super nice. It's going to take us forever to hit the ground at 2 meters per second. Okay, I'm going to go ahead and put a cut in here, and next episode, we will be much closer to the ground. You can leave your offerings to the engagement gods in the form of likes, comments, subscribes, and bell ringings, and I will see you all next time.